I don't believe that balance exists. I believe it's wholeness.
I'm whole to begin with, but I have work to do.
Wholeness to me is being able to be your own bridge to your heart, through your heart.
Karen Crawford, MD, is a graduate of the Indiana University School of Medicine Emergency Medicine Residency and worked in a community hospital setting for 17 years. Over the past 4 years, she has taken a deeper dive into learning about other healing modalities, studying a variety of subjects, including astrology. I reached out to her for a reading, and we immediately became friends. I wanted to share a little bit about what she does because I think it has so many misconceptions about it. And she's so down to earth, so kind, and so gentle that she was the perfect one to help us understand more about astrology and even touches a little bit on the tarot. When you start to understand these things, it opens up things in a whole new way. And what better person than one that came from a totally different background and had to learn from scratch like many of us are doing now.
I was pretty normal most of my life. I was an emergency medicine doctor. I was stamping out disease, saving lives. And then I hit about 40 years of age, and my sister gifted me an astrology reading, which is the first time I ever had one. You go to the supermarket, you flip through the things, but I had no idea. And I was like, how did he know so much about me? It was kind of creepy, but creepy in a good way.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of got to the point with medicine where I just felt like the system was not helping the patients in a way that I felt they needed. And if you're having like a heart attack or a stroke, I'm your girl. That's
right.
Using for, but there's so many people that can help. So then it kind of shifted me into, okay, well, why am I doing what I'm doing? Where am I in the world? And I basically started opening up out of my box. So I was raised Catholic. I was very black and white my whole life. And then as I matured and I saw things in the emergency department and life experiences, I'm like, okay, there's so much more than what I think is going on here. And so then basically, I don't even know how many books I read. And I started studying astrology. I had a second reading 2 years later. And she's like, if you are not doing metaphysical things, you should be. And she kind of like helped me have the permission in a way that, I've been taking care of people's bodies for years and years. But what about taking care of people's souls and their quest for life? Because I know that I'm a seeker. And I love talking with other seekers. And so astrology has been one of those tools I've picked up that has really helped me feel like this is lifelong learning. Like I am never going to know everything. It's such a vast field, right? So something that's always tweaked my curiosity. And so now, end of June last year, 2022 is when I kind of hung up my scrubs. And I was like, I'll take like a 3-month break and then I'll do, maybe telehealth or maybe some urgent care stuff. And I have not set foot for patient care in all these months. And it's almost like I'm a completely different person in a sense. Now if I'm watching a TV show, I'm like, oh my God, that's not right. They should have this and that. You know what I mean? Like I call it out.
Right.
My daughter will not watch Grey's Anatomy with me.
I was just going to say, I feel like I'm a doctor because I watch Grey's Anatomy. That's not true.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I feel the reason why I'm not missing patient care is because I get to spend an hour with someone and just give them all my attention and just focus on them and listen to them and help them be seen or felt or heard, which I think is ultimately what we are here to do for each other.
Right.
And just share what I know about astrology with them. And they're the teachers because they're the ones living the charts, So
right.
So I felt
that's so good. Yeah, we need that a little bit. I think there's a shift coming there in the medical world. But I agree where it's like, it's not the medical like tactics that are a problem sometimes or problems, but it's where we're missing that connection, the corporate side, which is what's showing up for a lot of people in a lot of areas. Religion, the corporate part of religion is the part that has some things to work on. The corporate part of business, the corporate part of health. Like it's those kind of things that that I think people are struggling with, and it comes across like they're just against it, but it's not quite that way. I think we're craving the connection we're wired for, like Brene Brown says, and I think that's what it sounds like you were doing. You were saying, I would like to really connect with these patients, and I'm not allowed to kind of do that the way that the structure set up.
You have to be seen with a certain amount of time, and it's like I have all these metrics and whatnot, and I feel like the answer is the balance between, you know, the metaphysical and like, because people don't think about food as medicine, you know, like maybe you wouldn't need your pharmaceutical drug if, you know, we worked on this about your diet, you know, you don't always make that connection, or the pill's easier, right? Or things like that. So there's so much about health in general. It's like,
well, we have a broken health model. We go get help when we're already broken. We don't have a wellness model, which is like, hey, how do we stay wellness? So the wellness industry, here we are, people. We're here to help you while you're well. The wellness industry, keep you well. And like you say, not just in physically, but, you know, in the soul too, in that part too. So I love and I appreciate that you're using that voice. I think you have, you know, your voice has some anchoring to it. It's because you've been on both sides, and because you are vulnerable and open with your experience.
I'm out of the closet. Like, I'm out of the closet. And it's been amazing because it's authentic. And and I feel like too, my message isn't medicine's bad. My message is, how can we all be healthy and whole, and what are the different modalities and things we can do to build a structure so that you know, everything has this divine timing kind of a thing. So
did you feel like that it was completely, when they said you need to go, if metaphysical isn't part of your life, you need to get to it, did that feel like nervous and scary, or did that feel like relief? Or
it opened up my curiosity. I think because I was, you know, raised Catholic, and I had certain ideas about things, and like, what if I like fall off the edge of the cliff and never come back? Like, what if I fall off the edge, you know? And so when I started doing all that, it was like, I listened to my inner voice. It's like, I know when something's amazing, when I'm like, oh, I just feel like, oh, this is so cool, it's so juicy and yummy, and it makes me happy. And it's internal. I mean, like when it's like you resonate with something, you vibrate with it. It's like, oh, this is so cool. And so those are the things. And so maybe somebody else's path is, you know, complete, like math turns them on. You know, like, you do that, because the whole thing is, we're all these millions and millions and millions of pieces of puzzles, and we're all here to fit in different ways, and there's not one right way or one bad way. We have to get out of the judgment of everything, you know. So when they said, you know, you're incredibly intuitive, you have all these gifts, and I'm like, really? But let's find out, you know. It's like, let me get out of my way, because my ego had a certain structure, you know, like, you're not supposed to do this, whatever. So it was nice to have that permission slip or freedom to explore. And I'm a rising Sagittarius, so hey babe, let's check it out. What's the real reality here, you know, and have fun with it. So
that reminds me, okay, so what does the rising, what does that mean when you say rising?
So when we look at a chart, you know, in Western astrology, we see the sign coming up, and you know, we that's why the time is so important when you're born. It's, some people say it's how you dawn on others, you know. So that really magnetic guy at a cocktail party, he's talking to like one other person, he's got sexy eyes and his hair's amazing. That's probably Scorpio, or something Scorpio in him, right? You just kind of like feel these things, you know. Some people also say it's like what the soul is rising to in this lifetime, and when it hits that high note, because all the energy in astrology has like a high road or a low road, where we can kind of every day we have to say, okay, was that the best way to use my energy in that situation, plus minus, right? And so we're always called to, you know, move to that highest expression. We have a spectrum of everything because we have free will, right? So the rising sign is kind of like how people see us. You know, it can also talk about our physical body. For example, like Cancer, they might be really good bodybuilders, or Libras might have perfect makeup and perfect, they just like to look nice. And Virgo risings, they don't seem to get wrinkles, I mean, like
Hey.
symmetrical faces, and I'm like, okay, next time coming up. No, I'm kidding now.
Yeah. Note to self. So is the rising, like, is that the same as your birthday, your horoscope, or not necessarily?
So your rising sign is a part of it's like the horoscope. Like if you think about like the natal chart, so that's like when we look at the charts, the circle,
Yeah,
and it's like a line that goes straight across the center. So it's on the eastern side of your
okay.
chart.
Yeah, because I think I was born in November, so I'm a Sagittarius, but I think I'm an Aquarius rising.
Oh, right, because that's determined. Yeah, so the signs go all the way around in a 24-hour period. So the rising sign changes every 2 hours.
Okay.
That's why it's so important to know your birth time, because that sets everything into place. And the moon changes like every 2.5-ish days. So it could be the moon, it shifts signs, during a day that you're born. So that's why it's also important to know your sign. So
right. I think I was told once that because I was Aquarius rising, that when I pick up a magazine and look at my horoscope, look more at that. Is that true?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because horoscopes are written on the rising signs.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like you look at your sun sign, but really you should look at your rising sign. And I'm not sure exactly the thing behind it, but you can also find like sun sign rising ones, sun sign horoscopes.
Right.
The vast majority are written by,
I think that's like gold in this interview already, because my little sassy magazine when I was young, I was looking at the wrong horoscope.
Well, I think there should be a disclaimer on there, like, hey, and if you don't know, go to this free website, astro.com. Right. You can look it up, to empower people, whatever. So yeah.
Totally. So one thing I thought of is, I think some people think of like having an astrologist or going to an astrologist as like they're going to, I think the perception is like they're going to go and they're not going to make any decisions until their astrologist tells them it's okay. Or the idea that like that's what it's for, is it's like, are all the stars aligned, so that I don't know how to make a decision without my astrologer telling me it's okay. What are your thoughts about that, or have you experienced that?
Several thoughts about that. Now there is something called like horary or electional. There's like horary and electional. It's like an old school technique. So let's say you lose your dog. You can call an astrologer and say, this is the time I lost my dog, this is where we were, and they can cast a chart for it and help you find it.
Wow.
Like that's when something, or like I was on a plane and my suitcase, didn't show up. Do you know where it is? Like they can cast a chart. Wow. And by looking at different, it's an amazing technique. Or let's say you want to get married, or you want to start a new business. What would be the best time for me? And they can cast a chart. It's called electional. So dates are electional, like, or it's more like finding something or whatever. So that's, I think, when it could be helpful, because at the end of the day, every astrologer should tell their client, you have free will. There is no such thing as, and I think too, if you're depending on an astrologer to like tell you how to live your life or different decisions, that's not a healthy relationship, because people ultimately have to feel, I feel astrologers should be empowered. And so, my job would be like, hey, I see this transit could be an invitation for you to open up to this in your life, and see how that feels for you. And we can talk about that as a dialogue, like what would be the high road of this choice, the low road of this choice. But for somebody to say, oh, you should totally do this, like that just gives me the heebie-jeebies, because that's not what we're about. That's not what good astrology is about. Yeah.
Right. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation. Yeah, because I really think that when you actually work with people that are knowledgeable, and that it's a lot more, it's different than maybe what you perceived it to be, and so I really liked what you shared, because I think that's helpful for people that just are like, no. The thing is if you give something a chance, it's like, oh, Yes. So tell me some of your transformative moments that move you maybe from your old way of thinking to your new way of thinking, some of those empowering moments that you've had.
I think knowing that I'm not alone in the universe, kind of a thing, because I think, for example, like working in emergency medicine, you're with a team, also you have to make this decision and things like that. But I prayed a lot when I was on my
Yeah.
shifts, because I'm like,
Yeah.
let me pick the right choices for this patient, let me give them the right care, answer their questions, have this consultant call back, kind of a thing.
I
And
love that.
yeah, and I recently got some confirmation that like I kind of believe in spirit guides. I believe
Mhm.
that, at the very least, you can think about having a guardian angel. I think a lot of people
Mhm.
resonate with that idea.
Yeah.
And the thought of them like loving me like all the
Mhm.
time, no matter what I do, even though I'm like me doing these stupid things, it's like I
Mhm.
could not possibly do anything to have them love me less. And
Mhm.
I grew up in this feeling of religion of like being judged. So I always
Mhm.
judged myself. So I kind of feel like knowing that, at the end of the day, I don't have to earn love. I am worthy. Like it's still something that's sinking in with me. But that was
Mhm.
huge for me because that
Yeah.
took away that like negative, like you suck and I can't believe you're so bad at this. And what do you think you're doing? Like it's
Mhm.
just such a negative vibration that
Right.
it's really let me feel like, okay, like I'm here for a reason. And when I kind of
Mhm.
tune into that, miracles happen, like
Mhm.
the most amazing synchronicities. And you can connect to people in such a way that's just, it's authentic, it's like,
Right.
couldn't even, I feel like those are little miracles. Every day we have little miracles. So I celebrate
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
So yeah, so knowing that I'm loved, having that freedom to explore the different ways that I can share that with other people, maybe inspire
Mhm.
them, because I have a lot of fire in my chart, right? So I'm like,
Mhm.
check this out, this is such good news, like what, so like that's like one of my things. And I just, it's just I love opening up, I love expanding, I love having a bigger idea of everything. So
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I think it was quite the day when I could separate. Like, I don't even know how if I'm going to word this correctly, but it's like, oh, that feeling about if I should or shouldn't do that is like a feeling in my body versus like different than. I mean, and sometimes you get those answers from the universe, or, but I think most of the time it's more like this actually, instead of like, how dare you, what are you thinking? It was like, that is me. That's my inner critic. That's my whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like that. And that's really just a feeling. It's not, it's not, it's not as big as I had made it be in the world. Does that make sense?
yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I really love like the heart math work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
The idea that the heart is sending like 90% more information to the brain than the brain's ever sending down to the heart. And then understanding about, so I know the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, like,
mm-hmm,
yeah, the vagus nerve, like I get all these, chemicals and stuff in our bodies, but the idea that when we're thinking these thoughts, our
mm-hmm.
brain doesn't know we're just thinking it. It's like, so yeah, I'm not fighting off a saber-toothed tiger. I'm thinking about
Right.
like this thing I have to do next week. And I am just
Mm-hmm.
as stressed. My heart rate's up. I'm sitting on
Right.
cortisol. My little adrenal glands are squinching down to nothing. But what if, I was like, I have
Mm-hmm.
this amazing opportunity and it's going to be so much fun and it's here for a reason. I'm welcoming this. And then I'm putting out oxytocin or dopamine and my body's like, ooh, we feel good. We got this. So it's like,
Yeah.
is spending more time in that fretful, anxious place doing anything good for me? No.
Right.
I'm not saying like we should just be like happy all the time and like goofballs.
Right.
It's not
Right.
that. It's like looking at the reality of something and saying, okay, well, what's going on right now? And what are the things I need to do to make this better? And so, you know, we are energy fields. We are like
Mm-hmm.
empty. Like the atom has like all this empty space in it. Like the fact we
Mm-hmm.
look solid is it's not really true in a sense.
Right.
So it's kind of like if you think about what we're creating as we're thinking and feeling these things, we can measure that distance around the heart. It's huge. It's way bigger than our brain's electromagnetic field. Our hearts is huge. And people are like, well, I feel like I should do this, but I know I should do something else because this is what my brain's telling me. Wow, where's that disconnect? How do you feel about that decision, right? So people don't always trust their bodies. They shut their bodies off. Why is your body in pain? Well, yeah, maybe you twisted your ankle, but maybe there's an energetic component to it that we just haven't talked about yet or something. Or, it's so complicated, but I kind of feel like at the end of the day, the more that we're focusing on how can I bring life and love into my world, and how can I, boost my happiness, like I have this little like clammy thing. It's like,
yeah, I love it.
I look at it and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy when I see you. Like, seriously?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a doctor. I'm left brain. I'm whatever. But like this makes, I mean, like, or my dog. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Comes up and licks. I'm like, oh. So people just, I feel like we need to connect with those parts of us even more, because I don't know if you saw that Suzanne Giesemann podcast with Dr. Craig, and he talked about the noosphere and how like every piece of the human whatever goes up into this area around the world. And it's like, that makes a difference for everything, So it's like that consciousness idea, right? So the more we work on the energy and have healthy energy, the more we're going to help everybody else. And that's something I feel like a lot of people are like, oh my God, the war in Ukraine, and like the chemical spill we just had, and the train derailed. I mean, there's like you can look at the news and just be like,
right.
But guess what? Like, I can't fix those things, but I can at least be an energy steward for myself and do as much as I can to help myself, inspire people around me, obviously donate to causes or vote in elections or all those things. Right. But each of us matter. And I think people just lose sight of every little thing that we can do matters, like having this talk matters. We might be helping somebody feel like they can be empowered in the world and make a difference,
Yeah. And I think it's really great what you're sharing, because with your background, because you're connected to the body part, I see that that's really helpful, because like what you said, we disconnect from our bodies, in a way, because when we're disconnected, I can't stress this enough, when we're disconnected from our bodies, which is our communicator, our information sender, then we're kind of all over the place. And then what we really do to feel better is I would say we bypass. We're looking at what are we binge watching, what are we eating, what are we drinking, and so because like when you talked about when it feels good inside your little thing, it's like, yeah, it's an empowering, different, like uplifting kind of feeling versus what do I need to do to make sure I don't feel that, or I'm not feeling that. It's totally different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love this book. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I promote books on your podcast?
Please.
It's called Energy Codes by Dr. Sue Morter. She's a chiropractor, and the way she breaks this down is like the body is kind of like the intermediary between our soul and our conscious self, kind of a thing. Like,
wow,
it's fascinating. And so it kind of connects in with the idea that we have this central core to ourselves, and it's like, so like we're really these big, amazing spirits, and we're kind of squished in these little meat bodies, like meat suits. And so the body is our friend. Like, how many people say, I love my body? I love my body. We all have things we hate about our bodies, or we have body image issues and things like that. But like, the body is a gift, like, we can feel these amazing things, and it's like, it's like the more you can love your body and be comfortable in your own skin, the more that you can just connect. You're grounded, but you also can soar to the highest of the highs, so yeah, I think people, I don't know why there's, I mean, I guess in the advertising and all these other things and stuff like that, but our bodies are just miracles, and eventually, we're going to lose our body, right? We're going to die, I believe our spirit goes on, our consciousness goes on and stuff like that. So we'll have potentially another shot at it. I don't, how everything works. I don't know. Like, you get this one. This is my ride or die, right? So I might as well love it and care for it and do the best I can for it,
Yeah. And what I hope people can listen to is that if somebody gives us permission to love our body, then it's not our own choice. Like, so, and so it's not a willpower thing. It's not like I'm going to love my body as much as it's like, I'm going to do the things that I can do to where I can say that and it feels authentic to me. And I guarantee you can do it. I guarantee. And I think, honestly, one of the things that helped me was my natal chart, getting my natal chart done, because you just have this sense of yourself that you're like, oh, it's okay for me to think, because it's almost like those little thoughts that kind of just have popped up throughout your life. And then you're like, oh, that was real. Like, that's allowed, or that's good for me. Okay. And it just, like you say, it's this permission, or just this, it just settles some of those I wonder ifs, and it just focuses you a little bit. And so do most people come and get their natal chart? Is that the most common thing that people come for you?
Yeah.
And what is that?
Yeah. And so when that happens, I sit down with somebody and we kind of talk about how their life's been going on initially. So that helps me see, like, okay, like how are they living their life? What are they saying yes to? What are they saying no to? Kind of like how centered they are, maybe. And some people, it's like, oh my gosh, like they're 35, like they feel like, they've had so much happen. And other people,
Wow.
maybe it's more of like an easy life, so it's such a spectrum, right? And then we talk about what makes them like their core pieces, the sun, the moon, and the rising signs. And then I kind of point out things that are like different in the chart or catch my eye, or things I feel like, honestly, like I could talk about a chart for 5 hours. There's like so much data in there, right?
Wow.
So I talk about the things. I usually try to at least touch on Saturn, because I feel like Saturn's such an important planet, because it talks about our life lesson in a chart. And if I can, like to talk about the North Node, because that's kind of like the shortcut to enlightenment. It's kind of like, something that we can kind of reach for that may not be super comfortable, I may not be aware of it. And then I talk a little bit about the transits, and that what that means is, okay, so we know Pluto is going to go into the sign of Aquarius, tomorrow. That's a big deal, right? So that can affect everybody differently depending on the charts, because what the birth chart is it's a clock, it's a calendar, it's like their own little personal time thing. And you overlay that into the universal way things are happening. So that's why, gosh, this person's having crazy stuff happen the past 2 or 3 years, and I feel fine with these things because it's hitting you differently, right? So that's that individual parts of it, which makes it super interesting and fascinating. And then once I do a natal chart with somebody, I've had people come back like maybe 3 or 4 months later, and they're like, gosh, what is going on right now for me? Because I feel like there's something like this, we'll look at the chart together. Or it can be like, I just want to be prepared, like the next like 3 or 4 months kind of a thing. And then there's also something called the solar return chart. So when you get close to your birthday, what we can do is see what the themes are for that next year with that special chart. It's basically a transit chart. But it's the exact same time you're like, so if you were just a new baby born right now, what would that look like for you? So that kind of gives a theme for that next year.
So I think my ruler is Saturn. I think it's like, so Uranus and Saturn, one was older and one was newer. Do you know anything about that?
Okay. So when you're looking at the sign of Aquarius.
Okay.
Back in the day, okay, they had these dudes going up to these little temples and like going on the roof, and they're like checking out the stars every single night, and they made these maps, okay? And the farthest planet they could see was Saturn. So there were 7 planets. So they have the Book of Hours. It's like, it's like what we consider to be like the traditional, old school astrology. There's 7 planets, 7 days, everything's just built off of that. Then telescopes. So then we discovered Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so those are kind of considered like the transpersonal planets. They're kind of like out there. They're kind of inviting us to a higher level of consciousness. So the sun rules Leo and the moon rules Cancer. Everybody else has extra rulers. Okay. So with Aquarius, Saturn is like the old school traditional astrology ruler, but Uranus also feeds into that Aquarius vibe. So it's kind of like it's kind of like, so true modern astrologers will just say, okay, it's just Uranus. But I kind of feel like people who are balanced look at both those planets for somebody, because where they are in your chart gives more clues to kind of like describe what might be happening for somebody, or ways they might be experiencing that energy, kind of thing.
Gotcha. And in my phone, I have, so coming up for me at the beginning of next month is kind of a Chiron. The Chiron is going through, oh shoot, I can't remember what house it's going through.
Is it your second house? Was it your second house?
Maybe. Is it my, it could be. It could be. I remember I just have it in my calendar to just kind of be aware. You know, it was in my chart with you, and I reached out and asked you a question about it, because I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna, like, this thing, I'm gonna my focus, I'm gonna work on this, you know, because I know that it's this opportunity for you to kind of work through some of your wounds. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like, you know, sometimes we get 2x4s up our heads. We're not going to miss that opportunity. It's like,
yeah.
Wow. Other times it might be more subtle. And I kind of feel like the more we can be aware and be the observer and kind of just start to say, okay, why do I feel this way about that? Why is this coming up right now? What does that have to do with anything? And then that helps us. The awareness helps us become observers of our lives and helps us learn to process things, because it might be something about an anger we never felt, or maybe it's like a grief we never allowed to feel, or something like that. And so Chiron speaks to like the wounded healer. There's something in every one of us that there's, you know, and so the myth of Chiron, he's like, you know, part mortal, part immortal. And I guess when he was born, like his mom was like, ew, and like rejected him as the first rejection. And then he like he became this like Renaissance guy. He was like a doctor, an astrologer, like amazing guy. He was just like helping everybody. And he was like this sought after mentor. And he trained Hercules, right? So Hercules goes and kills, I think it's the Hydra. Anyway, this like poison arrow next time they shot him. He shot Chiron in his immortal part. So that's the second wound. So it's kind of like, how do you live your life with chronic pain? Like, what are the things that are like really difficult to heal? So maybe it's never completely coming to a resolution, but it's like, okay, I'm working through this. And the gift, if you work with Chiron, is you can help other people work through it. Okay. Ultimately, we're all kind of called to some sort of service, right? Just some sort of sharing love or doing something. Because I think we all kind of feel on that human level, like, wow, like I want to share this with somebody. So Chiron's kind of like this, where he is in your chart, you know, the sign he's in, the house he's in, can kind of speak to those things for us. So when you know you're going to have a transit that's going to affect him, like Jupiter on your Chiron, you know, Jupiter magnifies things, right? So maybe that wound might feel bigger. But Jupiter also blesses things, you know? And so maybe there's like a silver lining you could find about that wound, you know? So there's so many different ways. That's the neat thing about astrology is there's not one sentence describing anything. They're all equally valid. And that's what's fun about different astrologers, is because every one of us have a different lens. And so you see things through different ways. And so you describe that to people. And for you reading it, you have your own lens and you have your own ideas about things. And ultimately it's your experience, kind of a thing. So yes, you're super smart to keep an eye on, like, it's like a finger on the pulse, you know? It's like
yeah, well, I enjoy it. And I also, you know, I think that's what I mean, I'm using my chart to my best ability. That's why I got it. I didn't get it just for fun. I got it because I want to make sure that, I mean, and it's not in a way like a fear way, but it's like, hey, there's that opportunity. And I love, it's the interpretation of it. And everybody comes from their own perspective. And the best part is that means that I come with my perspective, with my chart, and I am the common denominator that makes my life exist, you know, and I use that as a tool to help me out. But I step in as one of the participants, you know, of what this is going to look like for me. What is it going to teach me? How do I want it to go? So when I have that in my phone, I'm not just about like, you know, I mean, I will admit there's maybe a piece of me that's like, be on alert. Be on alert. It's your Chiron's coming around. But mostly it's like, I just want to be aware, because if it's popping up, I would be like, okay, there it is. And I appreciate what you just shared, because I didn't know that, where it's like, what I'm going to look for is what I'm also going to teach. That's what it is also teaching me, or, about, is it's not just my wound, but it's like, okay, this is your wound because you are going to teach it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, because if
right?
you do the work, people, that's the greatest gift, is somebody seeing like, wow, I overcame this trauma and this is how I did it. And maybe that'll resonate with them, maybe it won't. But to have these mentors in our lives who have this sage advice, who can kind of give us, and I feel like what you're speaking to too, I love what you're saying. And I feel like it's choice, because a lot of times we're stuck in reactivity. And we're like, why is this happening to me? I'm such a victim in my life. Like, no, not necessarily. How can you see this as something that can, obviously there's really bad things that happen to people, and not to take away anything from that. But
right.
What if the universe is conspiring to help us ultimately? If we can take that 20,000 foot view from it, I think it can make the dark night of the soul a little bit easier, because all of us at some point or another are going to have something. It's kind of like the chart can at least give you an idea of where that might land for you, or what time that might happen around for you, or kind of preparing you so you can take that pause and shift your perspective to something that's more in that vibration of, okay, well, this really sucks right now, but I know there's something I can grow from this, and I know I'm going to get a gift at the end. There's going to be something that I can see as growth, because we're here to evolve. I mean, I'm sorry, but the earth is, I don't know, like, we come down here, we're like, oh, I want to go to earth, and then we get here, we're like, what the hell did I sign up for, right? It's not easy at all. And you look at spiritually enlightened people, they have problems just like everybody else does, but what they have? They have a mindset that lets them shift out of this perspective that's so limited, and they know there's so much more out there, and they have tools to help them go through life. So
Yes. Yeah, and like I say, my chart's been one of my tools. It really has. I've listened to it over and over again. Out on walking the dog, I'll find different parts of it and be like, okay, what's going on there, or what was that again? It'll pop it in. So I just love it. And so, and then you also do tarot, is that right? Tell me about how that works. I love it. I'm like, I remembered that, but I'm like, all right, I might have to come back for part 5, because I could do my chart 50 times. I love it. But yeah, tell me about that. What's that like?
Well, tarot and astrology are actually very closely related. They have a lot of things they can connect with, different levels. And I always thought tarot was interesting. And I did an online course with Richard Knight. He's out of the UK. And then I met a person through his course named Graham. He's in Ireland, and he's amazing. He's a numerology guy, he's an astrology guy, he's a symbols guy, he's a depth psychologist. And it's like, wow, it's really interesting, because you don't have to know anything about the tarot, and you could just intuitively read the cards. Or you can be really left brain and a geek like me, and I've got all these books, and like I have spreadsheets, because at the end of the day, they both talk about archetypes. The chart talks about archetypes, the hero's journey, all those things kind of tie in. And so when we're looking at these questions in life, tarot is very good with saying, like, well, what would my life look like if I take this job? Well, let's see what the cards are saying. And so when you read the cards, you kind of know basically what the energy is. But when you're talking with somebody, when you're saying those words, different things click. It's so funny. So we were just talking about perspectives, and the card I drew today was the 4 of Cups. And here's this girl, and she's like, like, 4s are typically stability or stagnation kind of a thing, and then cups are like emotional, like relationships, or our subconscious, things like that. And so it's kind of like, this is a card where she's kind of like, oh, like I'm bored, or I'm unhappy about something. But it's like, if she just looked out the corner of her eye, magic, rainbows, incredible, beautiful things, right? So if this came up in a situation with someone, I'm like, wow, like, what's that little shift we can make where you can kind of feel like, wow, or maybe this is a time in your life where, you're just kind of integrating, you're just taking your time kind of a thing. So it's interesting too how the cards, because there's different spreads you can do, because the spreads are really fun. There's some really cool ones out there. And this is the Light Seers deck by Chris Ann. Love her. I think you should learn with the Raider White, because that has the symbology and the archetypal things that you kind of need to know. But I think once you know that, I think you should find a deck that you love, that just makes you, bringing you joy. And I think she's a great artist with her spirituality and the vibrancy of her colors. Everything is on a card for a reason. You pick up a tarot deck,
Right.
100%. So I think I've had people do both astrology readings with me and tarot, and it's so interesting how they often marry up to each other. And at the end of the day, it's like, how does that person, because I feel like it's kind of creepy sometimes, like how accurate the tarot is. It's like, oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea, right?
Yeah.
But when you read it intuitively, it's like, because I just believe so much in free will. Like, I would never say to somebody, okay, you need to leave your husband. I mean, like, that's not, you know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't be asking tarot readers that kind of things necessarily, but you can have a dialogue about what's going on in that relationship. Okay, I'm saying this. Do you feel like your egos are clashing? Is there like a power struggle going on? And it's like, oh, and like it gives people insights to things. So I think the best way to read the tarot is like an invitation to I feel like too, it's about this bigger perspective for things, like opening you up so that you can be inspired by something, or, maybe kind of looking out for a different thing that you weren't even originally putting in your sphere,
I love when I learned about that the card, like you say, it's a piece of art, and everything about that piece of art is symbolism, and that it's about that particular card. And so, and I was just like, oh, that makes sense. It's like their facial expressions, what's going on in the background, what colors are showing up. All of that is significant. It's not just in your brain divinizing what that is. It's like right there in the card. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, I like that. I like that. So do you memorize all the cards? Do you kind of know the personality of every single card? Yeah.
Well,
I wouldn't. Study is.
I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, I know. I would say no. I say know them for sure, but I'm always learning new things about them. Like, okay, so pentacles are first chakra and third chakra, and like, this color means this. So like, I know the cards, but as I'm learning more about the symbology and weaving it in, you will always learn more about the tarot, because when you do readings for people, you see how that card resonates. Okay, that's another way this card could be seen as, right? It just it's always expanding. It's always something. But I think at the end of the day, if you're using your intuition to come through, that's the best interpretation, because that's where you're in that field with the other person, and it's like, okay, wow, I really see how this could work this way for you, kind of a thing. So but you're a natural.
It's like a balance. It's a balance of both. Like like it's like, there's the intuition, and there's like you're using a tool.
Yes. You are so smart. You'd be so good at this.
Oh, well, I don't need to. I'm just going to come to you. You're my friend. But yeah, I love it. I know we could totally have a whole conversation more about that, because I bet you that was a minute to kind of be able to do tarot for a minute, coming with your Catholic background. Was that like a little bit of a jump when you moved to tarot?
Yeah.
Or was it the same with astrology? Was it the same? I don't know.
When I heard about this idea that everything was connected, so astrologers and astronomers were the same thing back in the day,
right?
Like, and then it was like, okay, so in astrology, it's earth-centered. We think that these heavenly bodies influence us, right? And astronomy is like, no, they're just planets and they're out there and whatever. So I get it, right? Yeah. But I really believe that there's a universal consciousness. We are all little pieces of that. We all make up the universal consciousness. Everything has something to do with it. All has life, right? So when I learned about that, I'm like, well, I mean, if you wanted to put it in a Christian perspective, why wouldn't God want to talk to me through
right?
You know, why wouldn't there be something I could say to somebody about, these different archetypes of the planets to help somebody feel connected to spirituality? And so I mean, it's just I think more pigeonholed cuts out all that beauty, where I don't necessarily need a priest to connect to whatever, to do whatever. Jesus can talk to me. Jesus can love me. If you're, it's like, so I just feel like it's another way that we can, it's all about setting your intention. So when I set an intention with the client, may the highest good be served, right? I mean, how is that going to hurt somebody? I'm not saying, all right, come on, to some whatever. And, it's nothing like that. So yeah. I think those days are behind us, because I think
so.
The patriarchy, the whole goal of tarot, when you talk about it, it's like that balancing between the conscious and the subconscious, the masculine and the feminine. Everything's coming down to that. And guess what our world state is in? We've got wars, we've got global, and we need the divine feminine to come back in, and not that she should rule, that we bring it all into balance, right? And so that's when I started learning about that stuff, I'm like, I can get that.
I because, and that's the thing, if you think about, I'm just making this up as I go along, but it's like, the tarot with how many cards are in a deck? How many
70.
cards are in? Okay. So that is such female as far as like all these options, where masculine, not male, not male, but masculine is it's like the black and white. Like, it's like, this is good and this is bad. Or what should we do? Should we do this or should we do this? And that's what I've loved about the same thing with you. You have this moment of, I think God can show up where I am at. I think he can show up where I am. Otherwise, if he can't, then whatever's stopping us is more powerful than God, which is, I don't know, right? Like, I got to think about that if that's true. I could go on that little journey for a while. Like, is there things that are more powerful than him that he can't show up? So these are my own little thoughts I have in my head where I'm like, oh, maybe I can just let some of these scales fall off a little bit and recognize them as tools and have my intention be what the most powerful thing versus the thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Kind of a strange little, but I see that with people. But it's like, I had a friend who, she went and had her first tarot reading and she loved it. And like, she bought a deck. She bought a deck of cards that same day to take it home. And she was like, these are like awesome. So she gets on Amazon and orders like 5 more. Well, a few weeks later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and she was sitting in the room, and this woman that was with her was like, will you please just get rid of those cards? What? They were the problem. That was the message telling her, see, you know what I mean? And here we are. I think we're 6-7 years out. She's cancer free. Everything was fine. So it's like, okay, so if that's going to be the reason why, then what's the reason why not? Or, those kinds of things. It's just strange how, but I promise you, friends, we've got the divine feminine. The feminine has something to offer. We have some things to offer, I promise.
Oh my God, yeah. The creativity, it's like that receptive, and that's how we get inspired, and it's, and I feel like it's about belief systems, right? I mean, and at the end of the day, there's nobody's going to be able to say, I can prove X, Y, and Z 100%. And this is why this is your choice, So that's why there's so much diversity out there. And I think people should believe it, I feel like there's people who are never going to look beyond what they have. And that's fine for them, because that's where they're at, right? And one is not better than the other.
Right.
But I also feel like if, you're experiencing something in your life that is, really difficult for you, or it's an awakening of sorts, and it's like, well, that's when you start to look like me. Like, I was like, oh my God, if I got a car accident and died on my way home, I'd be fine with it, because I hated my job. Okay. I just did not like it. What did I do? Well, I didn't keep working in that situation. Like, I tried to figure out what, so it's like everybody's different on that path that they have. But I really feel like the more that we become conscious, the more we ask questions, the more that we're observing things, the more we say, well, why do I believe what I believe? That's not an easy thing to look at, but at the end of the day, that helps us grow and evolve. And maybe you're going to be re-solidified on what you originally thought. Maybe you're going to have a brand new Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. You're like, what? It like it would blow your mind, like, oh, so it's like, it's you, but the thing is you get to choose. Everybody gets to choose. And if you're in a situation and I just don't really like this anymore.
Right.
What can we do to shift you? How can we help you get to that happy spot? Because I think at the end of the day, we're all responsible in a way for our own happiness and the way that we are in the world,
And use your word, that spectrum. That's the thing. You move along the spectrum and you find out where you sit, and then maybe you'll move along again. And it's that's what the flow is. It's kind of like when you're stuck and just here's where I am, that's it. Then there's no flow to our lives. There's no, and it's easy to get stuck there because we want that certainty, but if we can just, allow ourselves to see where do I fit on that spectrum of what feels right for me versus, that's not for me, or whatever. I can respect that. I can respect where you land on the spectrum if you've done some introspection,
right.
We're doing it. So it's not about a right and wrong. It's more about that authentic self. Yeah.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Yeah. I love it. So when people come, what are some good questions people can ask you when they want to get their chart done or a tarot reading, either one? What are some good questions for them to come with?
Well, I think with chart readings, when I look at transits, oftentimes it's interesting because I'll have people over like, I feel like something's crazy going on, whatever. It's the first time I'm reading from, like, oh wow, like they've got a lot of really major heavy transits, right? And so I can kind of speak to that with them. Now, sometimes maybe I don't see something quite as wow, earth shattering or whatever. But basic things like, okay, so a lot of people are kind of like, how is my job going? And like, do you see anything changing around my work right now? And so I'll kind of see, wow, like I can see a time in your life where you might have more detail oriented focus energy available to you. So this might be a really good time for you to buckle down and make your routine and make your list, because that energy might not have been as available to you previously, so kind of like put up your sail and let that wind kind of, and like Jupiter transits are always fun to talk about people because it's like, oh wow, Jupiter's on your sun, it's like you might have really, you might be recognized for something, or you're just gonna look shiny. You might get picked for something amazing, or maybe your work's gonna be like you get the VIP award, or maybe you'll just you might win the lottery, that'd be awesome, right? And then, tarot wise, I love doing a spread that's like the New Year spread, because I look at all this different stuff. I can see what kind of happened in the last year, and it kind of gives me an idea, kind of like a solar return chart, and the idea of what's your theme. Look at different parts of the chart for people, or the cards for people. And even just like it's even more like when people have like that could be more general reading, right? And then if somebody has like a specific thing, like how does my job look in the next like year or so, because tarot can look out about 6 months to a year. We can kind of see what comes up, and there's different spreads you can choose for things like that. But I kind of like seeing what's down the pike for people, for that feel of like what they can kind of expect to look forward to. I'm such an optimist,
Yeah. What do you have anything you do to prepare yourself for a reading, or is there anything that you do?
So I learned during the pandemic. So what I do is I meditate first, and people fill out a little thing when I book with me. So I read their booking question, and then I meditate, and then I put the cards out, and then I just pick the ones I'm drawn to, and I pick those out, and then I take a picture of it. And then when I talk to the client, I share the screen so they can see each card, and I point out each card, because I've had readings for me done before where the person's like this, with the card, and they tell me what it is, and I'm trying to think about the card, and they're talking. So I like having a visual kind of a thing. And now that the pandemic's over, I could always do like in-person readings and stuff like that.
Right.
But so I kind of have an idea of what the spread looks like wow, there's a ton of cups in here, something emotional is going to be a focus for this reading. Or oh my gosh, there's like a lot of major arcana cards, that's going to be a heavy hitter. This person's really going to be having something significant, maybe shifting or changing. Or sometimes I'll do 2 spreads, and I'll have like 2 cards repeated. So those are very interesting to me, like, whoa, what does that mean? So but I don't know anything until I talk to the client,
right?
You know what I mean? And that's where the magic happens. Cause like I'll just say something and they're like, oh my God. Like, they'll say their thing and I'm like, how did that happen? Oh, it's it's that
Right.
we play together. That's where the magic.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so just to like give some information, when you get your chart done specifically, there is there's 12 houses. Can you just describe kind of like what it means when you get your chart done? To somebody that's never done it before, maybe.
Yeah. So basically what it is like if somebody ran outside at the moment you were born, they took a picture of the sky. So your birth chart never changes. It's set in stone. And when we look at your chart, there's 10 planets, okay? And there's 12 signs. So not every sign will have a planet necessarily, it's too many. And then 12 houses. So it's kind of like a pattern. And so we'll see, wow, like she's got 4 planets in Aries and she's got 4 planets in the 12th house in Aries. Ooh, interesting. That makes a theme. It makes something gets highlighted about that. And so when we look at the chart, we talk about the sun, moon, and rising. And then, because when you're doing a natal chart, there's so much information to cover. And then, if somebody does a jam session, we can be like, oh, can you talk to me more about like my Mars and my Venus or something? We can focus on that more. We can kind of pick apart the chart more, things like that. So basically it's so incredible because it's a picture, but you could write like 25,000 words about it. It's so condensed, it's fascinating.
Because where that planet was, let's see, so the planet and the house have 2 different kind of personalities that kind of tell you some information. Was that correct?
So the idea is the planet is the energy. It's the actor. It's like it's in our psyche. It's like that energy, right? Then it's like the sign flavors it, it conditions it. So you can almost think about Brad Pitt and you put like like a leather jacket on him and you put him in the movie Inglourious Basterds, he's going to act a certain way, versus you put a cocktail jacket on and you put him in Ocean's 11. So the actor is Brad Pitt and his ultimate goal is like what, sexiness or something. The sign changes how he expresses that. He's got an accent in this one, and this one he's like, he's like nipping, Fabergé eggs, and then the house describes where it happens, like the stage. It's like the behavior we see externally. The planet and the sign are more internal, and then the house is what we see externally. So it's like the area of your life you see it playing out in, and that's why the birth time is so important. Because if we don't know an accurate birth time, we're not 100% sure how those houses line up. So if your son's in the 10th house and it's at the top of the chart, and let's say it's in Capricorn, I'm like, wow, this person most likely is very interested in work. They might be like a high achiever person, like maybe they're a CEO of their own company, or let's say they're a stay-at-home mom. Well, she's the president of the PTA, or she is so organized when she gets those kids ready for school. It's like precision, almost, so it's like, so you can see that how her core identity, her son is expressing herself is by being being of service to the bigger like the public, like that would be something that might be a theme for her when I would talk to her, kind of a thing. So
how she expresses it's a little different, it depends on her her personality, but it's going to look like this kind of, like it's going to way more versus something else, maybe, I guess you could say.
Well, the 10th house is like about like our career. It's like the public, it's like our great work in the world, our mission in life. So this person is somebody who might have challenges or experiences that are highlighted in that area. And if their son's in that house, that's the most important house of the chart, because that's how they're going to be expressing themselves. Like they're going to have some sort of connection to that area of life, kind of a thing. So that would be a theme.
I think mine's in the 10th house.
Yeah, you're in the 10th house. You're in the 10th house. So, here you are doing so you're working with the public. people you just don't even know. Like, you don't know every single person this is going to touch, but it's the public. It's a greater. So the best thing for a 10th house person is to get paid for being themselves, for like, you're bringing your wisdom to all these people because you're a Sagittarius sun, and it's like, and you're getting people excited about the greater reality, and like, what are your beliefs about yourself? Why don't you love your body? How can we do this? How can we be well together? Yeah, and you've got Venus right next to your sun. So, this makes you a very, there's this beauty with Venus, right? And there's like this harmony. So, you'd be great with teams because you know what you want to do, and you can be, very forward thinking with something, but yet at the same day you can collaborate with people, and and it makes you very kind and potentially compassionate and wanting to hear what other people have to say, kind of a thing. So yeah, I totally work with you. You'd be great.
Great.
Ambition and all this stuff combined, Huh. And that's the beauty of astrology, is there's just not one way it's going to express itself. It's like myriad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we all, and maybe, so if you think about the chart as like a cosmic blueprint of our soul lesson, like a map of sorts for us, or a clock or a calendar, we still can choose what we want to do with things, like, we still have that free will. So it's always a question mark,
Right. Right. Yeah. And you asked, I remember saying, you said you're living your chart pretty well. Are there times when you can see people they're completely not living their chart? And what would that look like?
That's kind of I kind of like get really excited when I see people that are just like you're so conscious, you're asking these questions, and like you just gotta, it's like, it really, I'm like, oh my God, you're here to do these things and you're doing it, and, I think there's, like I said, there's a spectrum of expression. So, maybe some people, maybe they're just not aware of how incredibly intuitive they are, and not that that's a bad thing, but it's like, wow, like, maybe you can tap into your dreams a little bit more. Maybe, try like automatic writing, or maybe listening to your body more. Because sometimes it's like things you aren't exposed to. But like, if I were to talk to you when you were like 25, it'd be a different reading, right? So when you talk to somebody, like what their life experiences have been, how interested in expanding themselves they've been. But and I say most of my clients are between like 40 and 60. I say the vast majority are between 40 and 60, but I've had a couple younger people, and it's fascinating, and then I had a lady who was 88.
Oh, that's a great age.
She was so cool. I'm like, oh my God, I love you. Like, it was so fun to talk about all her stuff that she's been through, right?
Wow.
So it's just, and so I mean, and that's the thing, everybody's chart is beautiful, everybody's chart is perfect for them. You chose that, so it's like, well, is my chart okay? Is there anything bad in my chart? Well, there's nothing bad in a chart. There's no bad news, I mean, some charts might have, more lines that are kind of waking up kind of lines, right? Or like, esoteric laws, like, okay, this is something that's going to keep you awake at the driver's wheel, and other people might have more blue lines, which suggest more of like a harmony or a gift or whatever. But maybe sometimes, some people say that if you have a lot of blue lines, it can be a little bit too easy, so you're not asking those big questions, and you might kind of, you won't feel those things as much necessarily, right? But that's what you see in astrologer, because then you can see like, okay, what do my lines look like and what's going on, kind of a thing. But I think a lot of people just kind of know, but sometimes hearing a label to what's going on for them, it's like that aha moment where it's like, really? Oh, I'm not crazy. I can have 5 voices in my head. Yes, you can have 5 voices in your head. And like, which one wins today? Well, you get to pick. Like, giving people agency themselves, I think that's what astrology is all about.
Yes. Well, tell us a little bit about this new change. What is it? Pluto moving into Aquarius, is that right?
Aquarius, yeah.
And Pluto, I know, has an orbit of like 200 and something years. Is that right? So this is a big deal for this to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what should we expect? What does this look like? How does it show up?
So like with everything in astrology, there's a high road and a low road, right? So back in the day, we had the American Revolution, the French Revolution. There's a lot of turmoil, upset, right? Because so we look at Pluto. Pluto is all about transformation, and so the high road is like a rebirth to something. Well, guess what? We've had a lot of broken systems revealed lately when he was in Capricorn. When 2008, the banks crashed, like a recession slash, was going on. And now, and then, we had Pluto and, Jupiter and Saturn all kind of messing around with COVID. So now that Pluto is going to shift into Aquarius, Aquarius at its highest road is humanitarianism for everybody. Like what are our rights, and forward thinking, progressive thinking. So maybe seeing some of these outdated, let's take healthcare, for example, saying how that was working. It's not working, right? So what are the ways we can take power back into the hands of the people to do something that's a better paradigm, a new paradigm? It's like Pluto exposes like the rottenness, like dig stuff up. So when we dig stuff, we can find decaying things. We can find treasure too, right? So Aquarius it's kind of like and it's going to be 20 years. Okay, so yeah, Pluto's shifting into Aquarius tomorrow, and he's going to put his toes in there for a while. What that means is he's going to go forward, and then he's going to have a retrograde motion back into Capricorn, and he stays in there for good in November of 2024. So when we first see a planet shifting into a sign, it's kind of like you're getting a taste test. This is your appetizer. And then when he goes fully into Aquarius, it's like, okay, now we're going to have our meal kind of a thing. And then we kind of process it over time. So we can see the different things that are happening now as like, okay, this is what we need to keep our eye on because this is the theme that's going to roll out kind of a thing. Now, does history repeat itself? Sometimes, maybe. Is it more of a theme that we can see? Potentially. So, looking at rights, the Supreme Court just took away abortion, for a federally thing. So what's going to happen with that? Or, gay marriage, there's like, these are all things that are affecting everyone, affecting the whole, which has an Aquarius feel. And there might be some transformation that needs to happen with some of these things. So it's kind of like, that's when you kind of have to watch the news because it's like, this is how it's unfolding for the collective. And then Pluto and Aquarius. So if you're a 0-degree Aquarius sun sign, moon sign, rising sign, or even one of your personal planets, there might be some big transformation happening to those pieces of you, those parts of you, kind of thing. So the people who have fixed energy, so you're looking at, Taurus, Leo, and then Aquarius and Scorpio. Those are the signs and the very end of the cardinal, because Pluto's moving from a cardinal sign in Capricorn into the fixed sign of Aquarius. So when you have that bridge point, it's affecting a lot of people, because there's more, it's not just one modality, it's affecting that in between things. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. That'll be interesting to see. And so by next year in November, then it goes fully in. So we've got about a year and a half before it's fully in. So these next 18 months kind of like maybe will show us, hey, these are the things that are going to change, whether for good or bad, I guess you could say. And pay attention, and maybe we can influence that it's for good. Maybe we can influence that it's for good. Let's do it.
And that's where Saturn in Pisces comes in, right? So, Saturn is about structure and, the form of things like government and do the discipline, do the hard things, right? And now he's been in his natural rulership with Capricorn and Aquarius. Now he's in Pisces, and Pisces is like, let's merge, let's be one, deep compassion, like kind of elusive and floaty, right? And Saturn's like, what? But spirituality could get grounding with Saturn, so it's kind of interesting that both of these big heavy hitters are shifting into these different signs that could maybe somehow grow spirituality for the collective, or at the very least give compassion for each other. How many humans have lost some of that, like with fatigue and burnout and all that kind of stuff, right? So I know I'm being optimistic and whatever, but I don't care. I'm gonna be that way. That's me. If you want to go see the doom forecast is down the road 2 blocks. It's not here.
I love it because the thing is I mean, that's the Viktor Frankl, idea. He was in a concentration camp and he was able to keep, it was his mindset that kept him going, right? So it's not the circumstances, it's how we feel about it. And back full circle to where we began, like if I can pay attention to how I feel and do the things that I need to do to make myself feel happy and vital and energized, then what's going on around me is secondary, right? Like that doesn't, we can flip the equation to where this comes first and then the atmosphere. And that's what's empowering about having like finding your toolbox. And for me, one of mine is my chart. One of my tools is my chart, and I appreciate it. And I have different cards that I'll pull as well. But it's like, you just have those moments where you're like, okay, I just need to see where I'm at. I just need to feel what I'm feeling, and it's surprising how it matches up. Like it's just surprising how it like matches up, and it's like, okay, I can do this. Brings me kind of back to center, and then I can move forward and make choices empowered, which that's my best word. I love to empower people. Authenticity and empowerment is what we're doing. Let's say that's what Pluto in Aquarius is about. Like
you Aquarius, you.
That's right.
One caution about astrology: I am all about self-study and dive into the books. I personally love Stephen Forrest, The Four Elements and his Inner Sky. And I love the way he writes about astrology, because if you find doom and gloomers who are like malefics and this is bad and that kind of stuff, I would steer away from that a little bit. I think there's a lot of really good people out there who present it, that spectrum we talked about. So if you're finding things that don't resonate with you, or it's like, wow, I feel yucky about this, well then keep going, because that's not for you. So kind of trusting your gut, because there's a lot of stuff out there, but I kind of feel like with anything, like Suzanne Gieseman's my spiritual person, because she's it. She is authenticity and integrity, right? Stephen Forrest, he feels like that for me. And I love Debra Silverman, and there's some really like Christopher Renstrom is hilarious. He has a thing on Astrology Hub called the Cosmic Calendar. He's so entertaining. He is so smart. Like, so you look around and find the people that, it's like, wow. So have fun diving in. Astrology is an ocean times a million, right? So start off with little bite-sized bits, because it can be overwhelming, so.
I love that. Great advice. So we always, we talk about the Wholeness Network, the wholeness, and the idea of wholeness. So what does wholeness mean to you, or what brings you wholeness, or what do you have to say about the idea of wholeness?
Yeah, I'm a Suzanne Giesemann student, so I'm gonna say, when I can understand that I am human and I have a soul or a spirit, and when I can get them on the same page together and strike that balance. Now, obviously, it's amazing when I'm on that soul part and I'm like, feeling that peace and that love. But wholeness to me is about that integration, understanding that we're just so much more than this physicality, and kind of like and for me, like for my wholeness in myself, like I know that I love to run, like I love being out in nature, like I know these things that kind of that connect me in that beautiful way, or what I'm painting with my art or things like that. So wholeness for me is when I'm expressing all those different parts of myself and recognizing that this life is a gift. I asked for this, and that I have the opportunity each day to choose to be love for someone or something, and throw confetti around, like, or kindness around like confetti, like that. I just love that phrase, and it kind of takes the pressure off. It's like, and it's I feel like it's contagious in a sense, because people are like, well, why are you so happy? What's going on with you? It's like, you can do it too. Like, so I think when you find those things that bring you joy, that connect you, and I feel like, meditation is an important part of that. I feel like reading is an important part of that. I think of being around people who are positive, because maybe you're raised in a family that, didn't, maybe it's tough, and you weren't really exposed to that kind of a thing. Well, start searching for your people, find your tribe. Because when you find your tribe, it's like you create this energy together that's like, wow, like I'm seen, felt, and heard and loved. Like, how amazing is that, right? And doing it for ourselves. So I feel like that's what I see wholeness as, is kind of like peeking behind the curtain a little bit and being like, oh, there's magic here, really, and I can be a part of it every day.
Feel empowered every day with wholeness videos, meditations, downloads, classes, and more by joining the Wholeness Library at thewholenessnetwork.com.